Hello, my name is Marcelo. First of all, I apologize, my English is not good enough, but I will try to do my best. Let's talk about hotels. Let's start with a little bit of history, then our vision, how we carry it forward, and finally what we expected from you. There are many kinds of hotels. There is the old traditional hotels whose charm lies in their history. The Regina in Paris or the Hotel de Ba where Visconti filmed Dead in Venice. There are boutique hotels, small and romantic. The big all-inclusive resorts, luxury hotels in Dubai. Some others, well, not as glamorous, like the Chelsea, refuge for poets, graces, and suicidal. Without mentioning the Timberline, that huge empty hotel where Jack Nicholson arrives after being hired as a landlord and ends up losing his mind. The hotels we'll be talking about don't belong to any of those categories. We are talking about big hotel chains, Marriott, Hilton, Four Seasons, etc. These are hotels that, even though they host tourists, are also designed for businessmen and businesswomen. I say big hotel chains having experienced big transformations since the 80s. In an architectural and operative sense, a hotel in the 80s hasn't changed much from a hotel in the 2021. The guest enters a big reception area, approaches the front desk, check in, gets handed the key and sometimes the Wi-Fi password. Then takes an elevator that brings them to a long hallway full of doors to access different rooms. Inside the room, there is a phone along with a booklet with the different contacts to call the different hotel services. Let's have in mind, in the 80s, there were no cell phone, no internet the way we know of today. Big hotel chains have suffered losses since Airbnb came into the picture. The question a guest asked themselves was, why pay for 100-feet room when for the same price I can get a whole apartment? The truth is that for business trip, it was still better to stay at a big hotel where there are no surprises, has room service, laundry service, breakfast, security, and other amenities. Even so, back then it was still thought that hotel had to change. But nobody knows really what had to change. For the hotel and transportation industry, the pandemic was devastating. The Hilton stock price fell from $123 in February 2020 to only $56 2 months later. But pandemics end, hotels won't disappear. People at some point will travel again for either business or pleasure. And it's probable that people will feel safer staying at a big hotel than at an Airbnb apartment. Even though hotel won't disappear, the already built hotel need to transform, and the hotels to be needed to rethink their functional and architectural design. Hotel Class aims to establish a new communication and operating model for big chain hotels and to transform that model into a standard. The Hotel Class model is built on the following principles: personal attention, automation of processes and services, reserve of all internal dependencies of the hotel, real-time data capture for analytics, and finally, the hotel as a certifying entity. Let's quick review what each of those principles entails. In the traditional model, hotels are impersonal. The interaction between hotel staff and the guests is minimal. In the Hotel Class model, there exists a figure called superhost, which is the major referent for the guest. This communication happens through the messaging system of the Hotel Class app. A superhost is assigned at the moment of booking, not at the check-in. This allows the guest to communicate with the superhost before arriving at the hotel. For example, a guest could ask the superhost to get a cab and pick them up at the airport, or let it know the flight was changed and they will arrive earlier. In the traditional model, if someone loses their passport or their luggage, the guest has to take care of it. In the Hotel Class model, the guest can always count on the superhost, which has an address book with the contacts of the consulates, airlines, travel assistants, etc. The messaging system of the Hotel Class app is very similar to WhatsApp. The contacts first include the superhost, but later the guest can add the contacts of the restaurant chef, the bar manager, the car rental office, etc. Before leaving the hotel, the guest rates the superhost, but the superhost also rates the guest. Let's review the check-in process in the traditional model. The guest arrives, approaches the front desk, hands in the documentation that includes their credit card, fills in a form, and finally is given the key to the room and in some cases a card with the Wi-Fi password. Given that the time for the check-in and check-out are strict, there is generally a long queue of guests waiting. The process is slow. In the hotel class model, there is a pre-check-in at the time of booking. Once the booking is done, an email is sent to the guest with a link to a form. This form contains, apart from the mandatory documentation, other information like airline and flight number, emergency contacts, if the guest has a disability, but also preferred room temperature, what they wish to have in the minibar, and other options. From this form, the guest can already contact the superhost. So, the check-in becomes an easy process, only for verification without need of any other record, key handover, or Wi-Fi password. In the hotel class model, the check-in and check-out are in the street. If the guests arrive before the time of the check-in, the hotel hosts them if they can. The same happens with the check-out, but the guest is still in contact with the superhost for some time after leaving the hotel. This allows them to ask the superhost for help if needed. In the traditional model, the room key is an electronic key that must be personalized. In the hotel class model, the key is a QR code in the hotel class app that the guest generates and has an expiration time. Every time the guests want to open the door, a new QR code is generated. Nowadays, electronic keys that use RFID technology or Bluetooth have many disadvantages. Let's imagine someone has to open the door using Bluetooth. Usually the Bluetooth is disabling phones because of how quickly it drains the battery. The handshaking process takes a while and it's also vulnerable. The hotel class model, the guest presses the room key button from the hotel class app and immediately gets the QR code to open the door. In the hotel class model, doors open asymmetrically. From the outside, it is open electronically. From the inside, it has to be opened mechanically by pushing. This is because in case of an emergency, there is no time to think of any procedure. The reflex is to push. When the door is open electronically, it unlocks, but at the same time, it slides a couple of inches, so it can also be opened by pushing. This means doorknobs are no longer needed. Inside the room, there is no phone, no thermostat, no remote control. Let's picture this. In your house, you are subscribed to Netflix and you want to get to the hotel room and keep watching the same movie. In the traditional model, assuming it has a smart TV with Wi-Fi connection, the guest will go to Netflix and go in. All of those needs to be done with the TV remote control. But also, and more importantly, needs to remember to log out when leaving the hotel so the next guest can use their account. In the hotel class model, it is possible to link video streaming accounts, that is Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney, etc. at the moment of booking and it is automatically unlink them when checking out. Let's imagine the room has 2 or 3 digital picture frames. I could put some picture of my friends or my family taken from the Instagram account, but the hotel can also use it. For example, to show pictures of an art gallery and invite the guests to visit it. Of course, all of this needs an amount of partnerships, LG, Samsung, Netflix, Spotify, etc. In the traditional model, if the guest wants to have a dinner at the restaurant or go to the spa, they will normally check out a booklet, get the phone and dial a number to make a reservation. In the hotel class model, the room doesn't have a phone. The guest uses the messaging system of the hotel class app to make a reservation, but can also add the contact of the manager of the spa or the restaurant and send them a message. all the dependencies the guest wish to go to now must be booked. This not only includes the restaurant or the spa, but also the bar, the pool, the gym, etc. Once it's booked, the hotel class generates a QR code to access the place. This code opens a sliding door, enables a turnstile, or simply lets the person at entrance know the reservation has been made. The messaging system that allows the addition of contact of the hotel staff facilitates many of the operating process. In this case, both the hotel and the guest benefit from this simplification. In the traditional model, if a guest wants room service to give them 2 additional towels, they can dial a phone, the internal number, or call the reception if they are in the room. But it becomes tedious to do if they are at the restaurant or outside the hotel. In the hotel class model, the guest adds the contact of the room service and send a message. As simple as that. Let's imagine the hotel has a car rental agency. Instead of going to the agency, ask for models and prices, the guest can add the contact of the agency manager and ask for a catalog. With the hotel class model, they don't have to fill a form nor give the credit card because the hotel already has that information. So they can rent a car from their room, send a picture of their driver license, and then go and pick it up. Before finishing this section, let me say a couple of things about messaging system. The guests come from different cities across the globe and speak different languages. When the system assigns a superhost to the guest, it has in mind the languages the guest may speak and the languages the superhost can speak. This is the first thing to have in mind. In the case where the languages don't match, the messaging system offers translation from one language to another. It can also happen that the guest leaves a voice message. In this case, the messaging system can use voice to text feature. Even though it is not perfect, it allows a quick interpretation of what the guest needs. In the traditional model, the hotel doesn't have information on how the guests use the facilities. In the hotel class model, since all dependencies need booking, we have this information. Now we can know the percentage of occupation of each place, have an estimate of how long guests stay there, and also know the response time of the messages sent by the guest. All this allows us to build loyalty, build a close relationship with the guest, but also optimize resources and reduce costs. All the messages of the messaging system are public. This means a supervisor can oversee the message thread between the guest and the hotel staff, especially when there is a conflict, to see how it was resolved and produce continuous improvement in the communication process. The messaging system of the hotel class app includes a notification mode. Now it is possible to notify a specific guest, the guests in a room or in a whole floor. For example, notifying at what time the floor will be disinfected, but also to all guests that are at the bar, restaurant, or any hotel dependency. We arrive at the last principle that refers to the hotel as certifying entity. Every place certified by the hotel not only follows the quality and sanitation standard, but also follows the hotel class operation model, that is, how booking, entrance, and payment, and the hotel class communication model. A guest can contact the person in charge of the certified place. At the moment of payment, the guest doesn't need cash nor to give their credit card. The hotel class app reads the QR code of the bill or the device, and it's the hotel who takes care of the payment. The hotel can certify restaurants, museums, shows, etc. Which establishment wouldn't want to be in the display of the big hotel? Let's assume a hotel certifies a French restaurant outside the hotel. Then the guest can see the menu and make a reservation in the same way they would if it was the hotel's restaurant. To choose a restaurant, the guest doesn't choose by checking how many Michelin stars the place has, or has to look up its rating in TripAdvisor. They check the rating that other guests of the hotel have given, but can also check the recommendations of the guests that have stayed at the hotel and come from a specific country or city. If the guest isn't satisfied with the service or notice that establishment does not meet the sanitation standard, they don't have to post it on social media. They notify the superhost, and the hotel takes these comments very seriously, which could cause the establishment to lose its certification. If the hotel has to maintain and update all the information of each place it certifies, it'd be an expensive and inefficient process. Instead, what hotels do is delegate an account so this information is updated by the manager of the certified place. For example, if it is a restaurant, to update the menu of the day. Let's see another example. The hotel certifies a show. In the traditional model, the guest has to look it up online and open the show's website, fill the form, including their credit card information, to buy the ticket. In the hotel class model, the guest indicates a date, time, and number of tickets. That's all. The hotel takes care of the payment process and gives the guest the key to access the place. Now, let's think about the following. Just like hotels certify museums, restaurants, excursions, what will happen if apart from that it also certifies Airbnb apartments? Whether because the hotel has no vacancy or simply because the guests wish for a bigger place. In this case, the apartment becomes an extra room for the hotel. The hotel offers room service, housekeeping, and the guests can have breakfast in the hotel and enjoy all its amenities, that is, pool, spa, gym, etc. This is our market. There are over 300 hotel chains. The first 5 sum up a total of 74,000 hotels around the world. Even though it's a pre-pandemic report, there were over 12,800 new hotels planned to be built in the 2019. I mention this because the architecture studies that will design and build these new hotels can contemplate aspects from the hotel class model from the very beginning. The hotel class model, which is a new operative and communication model, also refers to a new architectural design model. Allows me to give you an example. Drones are already here. If a guest requests something, it could arrive by air to the hotel. In this case, the architecture has to have in mind a landing zone for drones, and the hotel should oversee the air traffic. We said at the beginning that hotel class is a model that aims to become a standard. In this way, the hotel class app works for any hotel that assumes the model. The guest doesn't need to install a different app for each hotel. Let's not forget that the hotel now has a new income through the establishment it's certified. Every subsystem of the hotel class model runs in the cloud, which avoids the manual installation, updating, maintenance, and deployment of its own infrastructure. The cost of every service in the cloud is mostly variable and are calculated differently for each case. Even though there are many business models that could be applied, we choose the simplest one that consists of charging a fee for every booking. In this example, the choose hotel estimate the cost of the room and how long the stay will be. These values amount to $9,000 per month. This value includes the entire deployment in the cloud, the startup of the subsystems, and operation training. If a hotel chain adopts the hotel class model, it's hard to imagine it will do it all at once. First, it will want to try it, and perhaps will only choose a couple of rooms and guests to do this. If the model works, we do not need to go hotel by hotel. It's probable the change will implement it in every hotel in the chain, and that's where our business takes off. Currently, the booking service, messaging, reservation services, the delegation of administration for each certified place, and the generation of the QR code is developed as MVP. Now, how do we prove this model works? It's probable that many hotel chains want to take any risk. The proposition is to rent a small hotel, around 10 or 12 rooms, for 20 days, to try the messaging system, notifications, booking of internal spaces, the certification of at least one establishment outside the hotel, and the generation of QR codes. After this, we invite directors and investors to stay one day at the hotel and see and try the model. Doing this requires an estimated investment of $150,000. This is what I'm asking for, and this is where you have the last word. Thank you for your time.